I want to welcome everyone to this presentation, and we're really excited to share the story about the Tennant Trailhead Park project. This is a very personally important one to a number of people on the stage, so one that we're very excited to share with everyone. This park opened up just in April. It's on the way back for all the West Side folks, just off of Highway or I-90, so please check it out on your way home. We'll start with some intros here. Immediately to my left, Mike McCarty, North Bend City Planner, Bethany Fackrell, Snoqualmie Tribal Artist, Yvonne Kraus. Everyone knows Yvonne, former Executive Director of Evergreen. Sarah we have in the end from the Snoqualmie Tribe, and then also Michael down below, also from the Snoqualmie Tribe Government Affairs. I'll start out with what we're covering today. Initially, I'll start with a brief overview of the project, and then I'll pass off to Mike and Sarah, where they'll talk in a little bit more detail about the context of this specific park property in the Snoqualmie Valley and the importance to that and everyone else that lives and recreates there. We'll shift over to Yvonne, who will speak in a little bit more detail about the partnership with the Snoqualmie Tribe and how that came to be here. And then Michael will get into quite a bit more detail about why this specific project is important and how to use this as a model to exceed the requirements of Executive Order 2102. Tennant Trailhead Park, you can see is in the city of North Bend here, just at the very edge of town. It's on the south side of I-90, exit 31. Please come and check it out. This is really easy to get to. And part of what's really special about this project is that it's in town. It's easy to get to. You don't have to get in a car and drive and be way up in the woods. It's across the state, the trail systems that get the most use are the ones that are easiest to get to, and this is that. This park is 32 acres, and we're able to fit exactly 2 miles of trails in here in a relatively compact footprint. A quarter of those trails are two-way multi-use. You can see they're highlighted in green here. And the other 3/4 of the trails are one-way, descent-only mountain bike trails. You get experience all the way from very beginner, flowy, bermy, wide flow trails to quite a bit more advanced technical trails, rough, raw experience. Having such a wide breadth of trails at this park makes it excellent for Evergreen's education program, individuals going out looking to be able to progress and get enough variety and experience, which is oftentimes a challenge. And again, it's very, very easy to get to. There's this huge, beautiful parking lot, and it is full on most weekdays and every weekend. We're incredibly proud of it. This project just wrapped up in April. You can see the labor counts of Evergreen professional trail crew. And what really blew me away at the beginning of this project is we were trying to get around 1,000 hours of volunteer time. We got more than 2,000 hours. We actually got so much volunteer input on this project that we were able to build another trail that was not originally planned during it. So a real example of success in that. This eventually will connect to the Raging River trail system through a low traverse trail, and has really been a good example for other cities that are interested in putting in trails in their cities, but they maybe don't have 3,000 acres to build a giant trail system and 30 miles of trails. This is a good proof of concept that even on a relatively small parcel, you can build a really excellent trail experience that is a huge benefit to the local community. Overall cost for the project, including administration, project management, and building the restroom and parking lot was $2.2 million. I'll pass this over to Mike.
All right, so I just want to take us back to set the context of the how and why we came to acquire this property. So if you drove over to this conference from the west side, you passed this site if you were on I-90. So it's just on, as you're going through North Bend on I-90, it would just be on your right-hand side as a forested slope. You wouldn't notice it right now because it's just a part of the forest. You would certainly have noticed had it been developed. So the site is right at the base of Rattlesnake Mountain, right at the very backdrop of North Bend. You can see that picture right there on the right is just from I-90 looking up at the site. Right in the very center of the western part of the Mountains to Sound Greenway corridor, and really the backdrop to the city of North Bend. On one side we have the iconic Mount Si, which we're associated with, but on the other side, on the south side, is just as important, the forested hill slope of Rattlesnake Mountain. So the site context itself, we've got a lot of mature second growth forest, a lot of just big, beautiful trees throughout the site, several streams and wetlands. We've got a lot of steep and interesting topography. There's a number of glacial erratic features, big, huge boulders that really make the site quite interesting. So it's a truly beautiful site. I want to turn it over also to Sarah to speak a little bit more about why it's also very important to the Snoqualmie Tribe.
Yeah, to set more context about the land, this project is located on the ancestral lands of the Snoqualmie people. And on the screen here is the valley of the Snoqualmie map. This was created in early 2024 by the Snoqualmie Tribe as a part of the Snoqualmie Tribe Ancestral Lands Movement. You'll hear us say STALM, the acronym we use throughout this presentation, and the movement seeks to spread awareness of the Snoqualmie people who have lived here in the southern Salish Sea region since time immemorial. The movement shares significance of these lands and how it shares that information on how people can help the tribe to respect, restore, and protect these lands. And as you heard Mike mention, Rattlesnake Mountain, Rattlesnake Ridge, and Mount Si, these areas hold a place in the Snoqualmie people's creation story. You'll see them here on the map with their Lushootseed translated names as well. And when the two sisters from Tolt and Carnation returned from the land of the Star people, their relation celebrated by swinging on a cedar rope from Mount Si to Rattlesnake Ridge and back. And so this map represents Snoqualmie lands from a different perspective, and we'll dig into this even more later in the presentation. But to set more of that context, I'll hand it back to Mike to zoom back in on the property site.
So the property is also very important from a recreation standpoint. So again, it abuts Rattlesnake Mountain. There is the larger Rattlesnake Mountain Scenic Area owned by the Department of Natural Resources in King County. And that Rattlesnake Mountain Scenic Area has got a very extensive trail network. And that trail network extends even beyond Rattlesnake Mountain into the Tiger Mountain State Forest and the Raging River State Forest. So it's a huge area of potential recreation. But if you look at the red circle, is there a pointer on this thing? Maybe not. The red circle just to the right of the map is the site itself, and it was a huge missing link. So it's a separation. This property was a separation between North Bend residents, over 7,000 people that live just right there in North Bend, from being able to access the Rattlesnake Mountain Scenic Area. People used to have to get into their car and drive over to Snoqualmie Point Park on I-90 to be able to access the site. So this was a missing link that we wanted to be able to link our residents directly up onto Rattlesnake Mountain to enjoy the beauty up there and opportunities for recreation. So we knew that this was an important site. The county recognized that in some of their recreation planning. Department of Natural Resources recognized that in their Snoqualmie Corridor Recreation Plan. But it was a little out of reach at the time, and it was kind of the back burner. It wasn't really that much of a focus. So that changed in 2014. It went very quickly from the back burner to the front burner. So we received a subdivision application. The property is within city limits, and under the Growth Management Act, within city limits, you plan for urban uses at urban densities. And so the property was zoned for single-family residential development and multifamily residential development. It would have allowed up to 86 single-family homes and 226 multifamily homes. The first proposal that came in was to subdivide one of those parcels into 52 lots. So needless to say, the public was not excited about this. The North Bend Council was not very excited about this. This was our beautiful forested backdrop to the city. This was an important recreation area. This was an important area to the Snoqualmie Tribe, important habitat area, and we didn't want to see that lost to another subdivision. The owners of the property, the Tennant family, who are very long-time residents of North Bend, even some of the original residents of North Bend, were actually also not that excited to see it convert to a subdivision. They were willing to sell to the city, but they also couldn't sell for less than the market value of the property. The property was appraised at $2.3 million. So that was out of reach of a small town with a small budget, which is North Bend's context. So we recognized very early on that if we were ever to do or have an opportunity to acquire the site, we would need to seek partners. So we had a natural partner with the Skyview Metropolitan Park District. We'd worked with them on several projects in the past and actually came to joint ownership and joint management of a number of our city parks with Skyview. So there was a natural relationship there, and we were able to extend that, getting King County interested in the site as well. So King County in their recreation plan recognized the importance of this missing link, and their plan also recognized the value of partnerships working together. So we quickly mobilized together, and we also got the attention of the Mountain Sound Greenway Trust. Mountain Sound Greenway recognized that this big forested backdrop is a critical component of the character of the Greenway. And so they really lent a lot of political support, helped to start networking out, get the word out to other agencies, and in particular the Trust for Public Land. So together, North Bend, Snoqualmie, King County, and Mountain Sound Greenway Trust were able to bring the Trust for Public Land into the equation, and the Trust for Public Land actually purchased the property. So they purchased it in 2016 with the understanding that the majority of that purchase price was a bridge loan. So the partners would still need to come up with the money to actually buy the site. So there was a lot to do. We went after a lot of grants, the majority of it being the Land and Water Conservation Fund and the King County Conservation Futures Fund. So with a lot of letters of support from a lot of agencies, we were actually able to secure those grants. So those, together with Trust for Public Land, a little contribution from them, and then contributions directly from North Bend and directly from Skyview, we were able to purchase the property outright in 2017. So it was permanently protected open space at that point. Huge celebration in North Bend, huge celebration throughout the Mountain Sound Greenway Trust. So we were super excited. But acquiring the property was just the first step, and the public was very excited to get out and recreate on the site. So in my office, we probably got a call at least once a week of somebody asking, when are you guys going to put the trails in? So we worked together with Skyview Metropolitan Park District, put together a planning process, held a number of workshops, and came up with an initial concept plan for the property, which looked at where could trails go, where we would have our access and our parking and restrooms, where were some of the more critical areas that we wanted to reserve away from the activity of the site. And through that process, we solicited initial input from the Snoqualmie Tribe. But that solicitation of input was kind of your traditional model of, here's our plan, please come to our workshop, please provide us with comment. It wasn't a true engagement. So the plan actually turned out fairly well, but it was a little bit of a lost opportunity at the same time. We didn't really recognize that there was an opportunity there for broader collaboration to recognize mutual interests of the city and the tribe. So Skyview Metropolitan Park District then began to work to actually get the thing built. And they engaged with Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance to lead that effort. So Yvonne from Evergreen began to work more directly with the Snoqualmie Tribe on cultural resource issues and planning. And so we got a call in North Bend from Evergreen saying, we've got an idea. What do you think of having the Snoqualmie Tribe lead the effort to name the trails? So this was really intriguing. We liked the idea from a staff perspective, but there was a lot of unknowns about that. So unknowns about process. We had certain criteria about how trails are supposed to be named, and that's supposed to be done by the city council. So just a lot of unknowns, but we liked the idea. So we began a lot of conversations initially with staff, with Evergreen, with Skyview, with the tribe, and then ultimately to our council, and said, this is really a good idea. Let's maybe deviate from our standard process, and can we get authority to have the tribe lead the name of the trails within our city park? So ultimately the council said yes to that. And I want to turn it over now to Yvonne to go a little bit more into that process.
Thank you, Mike. So yeah, well, the city of North Bend was doing all that incredible work on master planning, and we were part of that as well at the Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance as a stakeholder, because these were going to be mountain bike trails. I had started work initially within our team on doing increased collaboration with the tribe. And so I'm gonna get away from Tennant for just a second and come back to it. But I wanna share on how we ended up getting to this level of collaboration to deliver the first Lushootseed named trail system in Washington State, which, as David said, we're very proud of. I had just had my first experience. Have any of you had an experience directly with DAHP through your agency? Yeah, so how much meaningful consultation do you have with the tribe through that process? Right? There is consultation and it's procedural, but is there a one-to-one direct connection with tribal members? No, right? So I had just for the first time gone through that process, and I finally understood the words that Jamie Martin from the Snoqualmie Tribe had told me a couple of years ago. There is no meaningful consultation with the tribe. So I wanted to improve that, and I called the tribe, and to their credit, they called me back the next day or emailed back the next day, which is really impressive. Executive Order 21-2002 had just come out, so I knew I needed to get more up to speed with that process. Wanted to learn more about what that meant when we apply for grants. Michael was actually going to speak to that a little. And then I had also just completed the Raging River Forest SEPA process, where the tribe commented about the appropriate amount of density of trail in the area that was being addressed. And we reduced our trail proposal by 50% based on tribal feedback. The Snoqualmie Tribe also released their Ancestral Lands Initiative, their movement at that time. So all these things sort of coalesced that made me call the tribe. And we started small when we initially started talking. Within the tribe and within Evergreen, we started doing land acknowledgement. Many of us were doing that, right around that time. But we desired more meaning after integrating that. Then we started doing direct site cleanup collaboration with the tribe. That's site-specific, so we wanted more site-specific work. We then found Bethany through Jamie, and Bethany created this mural that you see. She'll talk about her art a little bit more, but that was our first direct collaboration with the tribe to bring cultural integration into our team and into our office and connect to the land, because we work on the land, right? So we need to have that relationship and better understanding. That desired, or left the team with the desire for even more connectivity to tribal culture. And then I started meeting with Michael. We started brainstorming bigger and better things. And Michael was the one who said, hey, what about trail names? What about redesigning or renaming places that are already in existence? Raging, Tiger, Olali, they are all really important to us. So going through that very quickly, we had a shared vision for cultural integration in our projects. We all wanted to make that happen. We started with Olali, which is the state parks facility, connects into Forest Service and connects into North Bend. So I went, great, if we make this work, we can pull the theme and the artwork through multiple land managers. Let's get that going. So we had a call with state parks, a call with DNR, in a joint session to identify whether or not state parks and DNR would be willing to move forward with an integration of cultural resources and art in signage, kiosks, trail names. And it was right when state parks was hiring their tribal liaison. It was right when DNR was in their tribal consultation process on multiple things for OR. So neither one of their agencies were ready to take it on at the time. It was too big, too early, and so we ended up kind of rescoping, and Tennant Mike was working on the park with us already, and we're like, hey, Michael, why don't we do this at Tennant? And it ended up moving forward. So we tried too much too soon. We learned a little bit of a lesson, and then we realized you keep it simple. So we started small. We got an enormous amount of partners to buy into the idea, the process, and into the review process and the approvals for it. Then we called Bethany again to see if she'd be willing to help, and she said yes. So her and I had a lot of fun trying to figure out how you create a mountain bike in tribal art. Like, how do we do that? So we continued on the momentum that we had. We built support. We built a strong coalition of partners. While Mike was getting city council approval, Michael was getting tribal council approval, right? So we were getting ourselves lined up on all sides. And then the tribe lined up it's Angela, a translator for the Lushootseed language that we would integrate into our trail signs. And here's what we came up with. We were going to prioritize Lushootseed names for trails that were easy to read and easy to pronounce. Again, keep it simple. Prioritize trail names that are relevant to both the land, but also our community, the ride experience. So for example, a jump trail ended up being jumping spider or jumping frog?
We've got both.
We got both. But you connect to the land and the habitat and the animals that are there, but also connect to the user of the trail and the experience that you'll have. So that was important. Integrate cultural references to make it educational and mindful. You connect to the land, and then this was important for me, transparency and review and common tracking, right? Think about this from a legal perspective in the agency. If we're doing trail signs completely differently and stripping all of these things that you normally do, what's legal going to say about it? How it's going to get to the approval process, right? So we set up a strong online and open common tracking spreadsheet that everybody could see, and then most of all, we made it fun. I'm going to skip that part because we're running a little bit behind and hand it over to Sarah again. To talk a little bit more about the process and how we got there from here. So thanks all.
Yeah, I'll quickly share just another part of the process. I'm going to touch on, how did we get here to this current context and why it's meaningful. Have you heard of the term native erasure? I'll give a quick 101. So the erasure and destruction of Native people and their cultures has taken many different forms throughout history. Today, it often occurs through signage throughout ancestral lands. Sometimes intentional, sometimes not, but it's crucial that native erasure not occur. And the Snoqualmie Tribe and people have been erased in many interpretive signs, regional marketing materials, and other communication materials. And as a result, many individuals are unaware of the Snoqualmie Tribe, despite these places carrying the Snoqualmie name. Why is this harmful to Native people? Many non-Native individuals have embraced false stories about Native people without even knowing it, or thinking Native people are no longer present on the lands. Native erasure contributes to treaty and inherent indigenous rights being denied, broken, and violated. A few ways that this occurs in trail and park signage specifically: rewriting of history and narratives about Native people and culture, complete absence of inclusion, Native nations referenced in a very broad way, and tribes and Native people being described only in anthropological terms. Next slide, please. Sorry. So this project is an example that shows partners interrupting Native erasure. This project was collaborative. It had that creative, meaningful engagement. Where tribal stories, art, and the Lushootseed language was actually incorporated into the signage at Tennant Trailhead Park, interrupting Native erasure. Unfortunately, it's far more often you see projects like these designed without any acknowledgement or inclusion of tribes. So projects like Tennant Trailhead Park are unique. They included tribes, they included tribal language, art, and statements of values, and reminders to recreate respectfully. And this needs to be the norm. Other projects in the area do have a long ways to go to make sure that Native erasure isn't occurring through signs, naming of trails, overall design. So with the next will start highlighting some of the actual art and the actual significance of the signage, trails, and Bethany will talk more about the Snoqualmie art included. And as you've heard, this is the first trail system in Lushootseed, and Lushootseed is the traditional native language of the Snoqualmie people and other tribes in the Salish Sea region. And I just wanted to share that this trail system is not just a network of paths, it's a living classroom, an educational journey that invites visitors to engage respectfully while on Snoqualmie lands. And you'll see here through the imagery and as Bethany talks through the rest of the art, that the trail names were thoughtfully paired with her artistic interpretations of different culturally significant wildlife and informational signs that displayed symbols that are significant to the tribe. So I will now pass it over to Bethany to talk more about that imagery and the messaging that came with those signs.
Okay, I start by telling people I'm an artist. I don't really do speeches too often, so just bear with me. I'm actually kind of a shy person, and then sometimes not. I'm just the introvert kind of person, but see, I'm already fumbling with stuff up here. I'm going to start with the culturally modified tree, which are really important to our people because historically there were places that we would use for our trails to get to places of importance, whether that be like a berry patch, a ceremonial spot. That's how we would mark our trees. So in this process with the bikes, this is how you kind of find your way to your places, of different levels. I also have the 3 triangles repeating in a pattern, which is common in our basket weaving. I felt like this actually showed direction very well. Just keep moving forward. You'll see on the actual signage itself on the next slide, it's like moving forward. And the significance here of the 3 is good energy. So when we go to the trail, have that good energy. There's 3 of them for like mind, body, and heart, And I'm sure a lot of bike trail people have that, I'm not a bike trail person myself, but that's okay. And then I have the amplification symbol, and that's a Salish symbol. It usually has a circle in the middle, and you'll see that on the next slide too. That's the eye of the creator. So here my thought process was to amplify our Lushootseed, amplify everything, like it's being seen, we're being seen here as our as Snoqualmie people. Okay, almost done. So during this design process, there was certain parameters that I had to follow with like the coloring and the black diamond or the green circle and the blue square. And so I had to follow certain things. Same thing with the trail bike guy and the hiking symbol. So I added little spices to it. So like the bike guy has a cedar hat and so does the hiking guy. So the cedar hat is something we wear traditionally. We, we'll strip the cedar bark, process it down and weave it. Let's see here. What else do we got here? And, I just had fun. A lot of my art is just fun. I grew up drawing anime, and so I kind of have that cartoony look, and I put, art, my tradition in it. And yeah, I think that concludes it. Thanks for listening.
And I just wanted to shout out the other folks in the Snoqualmie Tribe. Really heartfelt thanks to everyone who contributed. Really special appreciation goes to Wayne, Culture Coordinator, and Angela Weimer, Language Specialist, Jamie Martin, the Executive Director of the Governmental Affairs and Special Projects Department, Bethany Frackrow, the Snoqualmie Tribal Artist, Ezekiel Roloff, the Tribal Wildlife Biologist, Stephen Moses, the Director of Historical Preservation Archaeology, and who you'll hear from next, Michael Ross, the Government Affairs Coordinator.
Can everyone hear me? All right. I don't normally open open by introducing myself in Lushootseed, but I think it makes sense, I guess, in this context. But Wiats Tugualapu te Ishid, Tugualapu te Ishid, Inach Kanicha Titsta, Stokwabu Chad. And what that means is hello. Tugualapu te Ishid means like to my friends and relations. And then Inach Kanicha is my given name for my great grandmother. And then Stokwabu Chad is the way that we pronounce Snoqualmie. So that's just people of the moon is the translation. So so the part that I wanted to kind of get across in this project that was not just about trails, but about collaboration with land managers and user groups to finally integrate some tribal narrative and history and importance that we have to and connection to the land or waterways wherever the project is at. One thing that we really fought a lot for in the governor's office was Executive Order 2102, which was for cultural protection, protection of archaeological sites that are meaningful to tribes in the state. And one provision that really expanded the kind of authority and coverage of this executive order was that it applies not just to state agencies or small cabinet governor agencies. It applies to nonprofits and NGOs that take state funding to build trails or do projects or planning that can impact tribes. And a lot of people just don't know that it exists and don't know exactly how to implement it in their work or what they're working on with their organization on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's kind of what Yvonne touched on, is that she figured it out the hard way, and but she was humble enough to reach out to us and ask us, what to do next and how we can consult meaningfully with the tribe. And and it turned into this beautiful project, and it's the first of its kind. If any of you have been to like Whistler or BC, there's a lot of park signage and trail signage that incorporate local languages, tribal languages, and narrative about tribes in the area. And we hope that that becomes the norm here in this area too someday. So Executive Order 2002, I kind of went a little too quickly on the last one, but it covers like state DNR, WDFW, parks, and then if you take RCO funding for a project that you're working on, you technically are supposed to be working with that agency and DAP, the Department of Archaeology, Historical Preservation, to make sure that you're working with the right tribes in the area of your project. Next up, we decided to create a training module about this because the state didn't, so they still haven't done that. And this is one section of that module, and we call it the communication protocol. And it's really just a way that as an organization, non-state, non-federal agency, you can have a communication with us and have contact with us that won't be offensive or awkward. So first off, like I said, reach out to the state agency that you're taking funding from, ask about 2102, ask what tribes you're supposed to be working with, and then make contact with those tribes. And contact doesn't mean just sending one email one time. Like, this isn't a check the box situation. The affected tribe will come in hot whenever you get to SEPA or NEPA, if your project ever requires that, and they'll be upset that you didn't reach out to them earlier. Establishing that connection, figuring out who the right person is at the tribe for the project that you're doing is really important, and then documenting your communication with them, sharing your meeting notes so that there isn't like any miscommunication or there's some interpretation that maybe the tribal representative didn't mean to say that or didn't want to come across a certain way. Obviously being respectful, and what I mean by being transparent is a lot of times we'll get brought into a project when it's like the end of a design phase and they're ready to start construction, and they're really married to this because they've spent so much of their time and energy on this design. And then we have to tell them, like, yeah, you're gonna go through an archaeological site, and that, we're not the bad guys, but if you would have reached out earlier, we could have told you that. So show us all of the information. Don't just think that we only need to know about one section of your project or 1 mile of your trail or whatever it is. You don't know where our cultural sites are, right? You don't know where the things that are significant to us are, and so unless you tell us about your entire project in its entirety, we can't help mitigate any sort of negative impact your project might have on our culturally sensitive areas. And then, of course, come up with some mitigation plan, submit that plan to your funding source, to DAP. Just depends on wherever you're getting the grant funding from. Also, I talk like this normally, but I'm not, okay. Just so everyone knows that. So yeah, impacting, going beyond this, going beyond the requirements to consult and to reach out and check the box, build a relationship with tribes, use your project as a way to start that trust building and to create the connection. It doesn't have to be about the project. If you're a land manager or you're an organization doing work in a certain area, you're probably going to be doing that for years. You could be doing another project years down the road, and the tribe is still going to be there. And so creating that connection on this first project could really benefit you on a project later on down the line. As Sarah talked about, reject tribal erasure. Understand that when you do another sign about coal or another sign about timber cutting or railroads, and you don't mention the importance of the land to tribes or the existence of tribal people before contact, it gives the impression, especially to young people, that there was no one here, and history only started when people started cutting down the trees and building railroads. And then obviously the other one, restoration, is recreation. We need to look at restoration in a way that can help offset the impact of recreation. In our minds, the way that it's impacted our people in the Snoqualmie area with I-90 corridor, Lake Sammamish, Issaquah Alps, Snoqualmie Valley being Seattle's backyard. You can do restoration to help offset the consumption of recreation. It is an extractive form of recreation is an extractive form. It's an extracted activity. It's not coal mining, it's not timber harvesting, but it is having an impact. And it's come to the point where we can't practice our religion in areas that we would go to that are sacred to us because they are overpopulated. And we can't practice our traditional ways anymore because there's no solitude left. Educational efforts, and that was it. That was a horrible transition, but next up, Mike.
So this is just an exciting follow-up to what we've experienced with Tennant Trailhead Park. So with Tennant Trailhead Park, we built a lot of relationship and a lot of experience and connection with the Snoqualmie Tribe on all of these very meaningful things. And we were able to carry that forward into our new Dahlgren Family Park, which we just also celebrated the grand opening of a few months after Tennant Trailhead Park. And here you can see a traditional form of canoe. This is a play structure in our Dahlgren Family Park, but we were able to get Bethany to paint in traditional imagery the canoe. And it was such a meaningful experience to have Bethany there and several tribal staff and some tribal elders there to just say thank you and to recognize that growing relationship. So the relationship continues and it builds. So I'll turn it over to, I think, Yvonne to maybe...
Yeah, I was just going to wrap up with some of the lessons learned from the project, and I'll share one, which is the first here, and that's just the overwhelming concern at the front end of this that we're going to mess something up. It's a new relationship, and it's important, so we don't want to misstep. But I think that we found that by coming from a place of openness and authenticity, that we could expect that, and we did find that in the other partners. And I believe this is the first of hopefully many steps along this same road that we have with the Snoqualmie Tribe and other tribes throughout the state. But yeah, just being, it's like the hesitation to move forward could have allowed us to go on as we have been doing things for so long, but just being open and flexible, and again, bringing authenticity to it was a big part of our success in it.
So you heard a lot about, at first, thinking big and thinking and acting local and meaningfully. That was a lesson learned, so that actually precedent, the creation of this trail sets a precedent, illustrates how land managers can incorporate Indigenous values and history into recreational spaces, and this could be a template for future trail naming and interpretive signage, promoting respect and inclusion across all managed lands. And you saw through the art, the messaging, keeping language simple and clear and meaningful. It really resonated with activities going on and building relationships with wildlife and everyone who uses those lands.
I want to add that I think in person was really important. Coming together to meet on site with the partners, with the Snoqualmie Tribe, with Evergreen, in a purposeful manner was so meaningful and made a huge difference. I think that when we first came together to meet to talk about what could be trail names, that's when it really struck me that this is something that's bigger than just a project.
Thank you. I wanted to share that. So how many of you are from agencies, state, municipality? Okay, so there was a lot of lessons learned in how we as a 501c3 could act as a facilitator in this, and then when the agency can't take it on, state parks and DNR just at the time was too early, wasn't ready, wasn't the right timing. But Evergreen could still move the idea and the concept forward. So if you are with an agency and you'd like to see more of this accomplished, I'd say utilize the 501c3s in your community, because they can push things through the agency legal, or, it's just hard to do, and through us it might be a little easier. So that was a big reason why I ended up moving forward with this. And then let's talk about intertribal politics, can we? So the first bullet, I'm just going to say it, I was terrified when I started off, and I told Michael so, and I thought I had told Jamie so, but apparently I was too afraid to be afraid to tell Jamie, so I never told her in person. But I told Michael, I'm terrified because I'm going to mess up. I'm going to share some stories of how we did mess up, and we laughed about it, right? Where was I going to go with the terrified? Oh yeah, intertribal politics. So I was mostly concerned about what's going to happen when I work with the Snoqualmie Tribe on land and a project where Muckleshoot and the Tulalip are also very, very, we need to engage them all. And Jamie up front told me you need to reach out to both. And here's again, keep it simple. I talked to Brian Miller at the Tulalip at a conference, and I told him we had this idea and wanted to move forward. And Brian said, stay away from any language around treaty rights, and stay away from any names, and you're good to go. Not a single comment from the Tulalip, no response from the Muckleshoot, so I don't know if that means support, not support, or maybe it never made it through their process. But the thing that I was most worried about ended up being resolved with a very simple clarification from another tribe. So when we think big and we think complicated, we don't have to. So will you let me tell a couple stories? This is the fun part, and this is, Bethany is amazing. So I learned a lot, and I asked a lot of stupid questions. I'll never forget that Bethany was in our office, and I said, Bethany, happy Thanksgiving. I'm doing this. What are you doing? And she's like, Yvonne, not a day of celebration, right? Anybody see Northern Exposure, right? We throw rotten tomatoes at white people. So So the learning started from day one in communication, and it was learning in places where you don't realize it. The cedar hats that Bethany pointed out, we got specific comments back from the reviewers at King County and Sideview. It's like, can you please remove the pointy hats? The pointy hats are cultural appropriation without representation. Like, I know, it's actually designed by an artist. So again, that idea of fear of doing things wrong, let's eliminate this imagery because it might piss people off. No, right? Like, collaboration, trust. My personal embarrassment, another one with Bethany, is she put the basket weave along all of the side of the symbols, and I was like, Bethany, that tire track doesn't look so good in the first iteration of the art, right? So she told me, Yvonne, you dummy, that's a basket weave, right? So we talked about the hats, the basket weave. There was a third thing in the sign, the CMT. This was you, Mike. We turned the green, blue, and black symbols with the CMT imagery in it, right? And we did that deliberately. You now know the meaning, but when we asked for review comments, we got a comment back from the city of North Bend. It's like, it looks a little cluttered. Can we eliminate the CMT and just go back, keep it simple? People know what green, blue, and black mean. Like, nope, that's the cultural integration message and the simple education piece that needs to stay in. So I think all parties learned a lot by those very simple symbols that we integrated. So it's important work, it's urgent work, it's meaningful work. We all need to be doing this, and wherever you're working, right? But you can keep it simple. It doesn't need to be overwhelming, and it can be a lot of fun. So, thank you.
So that concludes what we were hoping to cover, but definitely welcome any questions, comments, anyone. If you do have any, please raise your hand.
I had a question about the Tennant, the name of the park. I mean, was there talk about naming it something different, or?
I think that it needed to stay Tennant from the landowners that had it previously as a part of the agreement during the acquisition. Mike, you may know differently, but there was discussion about that. That'd be a great idea, but that was a limitation.
We're still working on it.
Ben.
There was a little bit of talk about this being a precedent for things in the future. Is there anything that you're looking forward to on the horizon that you think will be inspired by this, or will it be similar to this, or it's sort of a what's next question?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity for this at most trail systems to different levels, whether that's renaming trails or just tuning up informational kiosks. What you saw on a lot of this is actually directly from the kiosk at the trailhead. So it's explaining the language, giving the pronunciation guides, the maps, explanations of the art. That kind of information is relatively straightforward to integrate in with a lot of trail systems, and it's maybe not such the long lead time. And that would be kind of the first place that I would think to look.
Yeah, I don't know what Mike was going to say, but yeah, Tennant has definitely opened the door for us in working on projects with Mount Baker Snoqualmie and other land managers in the area to kind of replicate this that we did here into other signage at other parks and trail systems.
And I'll just add that the canoe that you saw in our Dahlgren Family Park, we're currently working with the Snoqualmie Tribe, and the Snoqualmie Tribe is developing the interpretive signs for that park for the city. So it's just a direct relationship now.
Good.
Thanks for sharing a super cool project, and I've heard about this over the years from Yvonne, but I love seeing the signage. It's awesome. My question is, like, there's so many awful signs out there. Like, I see them all the time, like Michael was talking about, where the story starts with the railroad or lessons learned in terms of like what the best pathways are to getting to the land manager or the government, the city or the county government to suggest that they might change the sign, and like how to like elevate that in their priority list? Because signage is expensive, and especially when you're consulting with tribes. From this project, do you have any recommendations for either individuals or organizations on like getting governments to take on those types of projects?
Gosh, it's kind of tough if you're considering trails that have already been named or parks that have already been named. I think the interest in renaming is maybe slower. It's going to be slower to happen, but I do think, especially with new construction, whether it's new trails or new parks, that's really should be the first opportunity. I know, like working specifically with some of our other partners, there's not a lot of framework about how anything is named in the first place. So there's hesitation on renaming trails for a lot of the reasons that Yvonne mentioned earlier, of not wanting to offend anyone and having names that work with everyone, and that's just like really difficult to do. I think it's really going to vary quite a bit depending on who the specific land manager is. I don't know that we have the solution for every land manager, but I think that we do have a really robust one with the city of North Bend. And hopefully that can be an example for elsewhere.
Yeah, David, can I add real quick? I think when I put up the 501c3 as a facilitator, I mean, you with the Mountaineers, signage is expensive, but it's also really, I have found that for this work, it is incredibly easy and rewarding to find donations and donors who want to support this. So another reason to like, this was a fairly small in scope process, and we didn't end up needing to do a separate donor campaign, but people were ready to jump in. So keep that in mind as well, as if you have the place, right, and an opportunity to rename with the tribal collaboration and coordination, the funding shouldn't be a barrier, in my opinion. I think members of our organization want to see this happen. Michael's the one who brought up renaming Tiger and Raging. If we do that and pull this team through, it won't be quite as fast, to David's point, but I have no doubt we can find support for it. Yeah.
I think there's definitely easier successes on updating informational kiosks, because most are very out of date in the first place. They may not even have the accurate inventory of trails on them. It may not display the other partners that need to be on there properly. So they probably need to be updated anyway. This is a really good opportunity to not just update them in line to what they have been, but kind of reimagine that and make sure we're more fully telling the story of what needs to be told.
Yeah, a great presentation. I really appreciate this, and I need to take some of this back to the project I'm working on. This is on Mount St. Helens National Volcanic Monument, new trail design project. And so, like, interpretive panels, signage is going to be like a future element. It's not part of the trail design piece. It wasn't built in at this stage. My question is advice on working with multiple tribes. And Michael, I think you're on call. You talked about this a little bit. But like Mount St. Helens is culturally significant to, multiple tribes. It's not a small space, and so it seems like it's more complicated to write the text of an interpretive panel. And like, what story are you going to highlight? Does that imply ownership of certain aspects of the landscape? And so, if you have any advice for how we might invite tribes to be part of that process, and like, I don't think I would want to, or I'm not qualified to facilitate that discussion that leads to text and images, but would it be a consultant, or like, how does that work?
That's many great questions rolled into one. First of all, don't expect one tribe to facilitate communications with the other tribes. Like, just because we might be cousins doesn't mean we know everybody, and we need to do that. As a land manager or as a person that's coming forward with a plan, that's their responsibility. We created this training module, and I pulled out that communication protocol. That can be used for any tribe. And I think that's kind of the first step, is initiating contact and then trying to build that rapport with the right person at each tribe. Yeah, there's no shortcut. You can't just talk to one and you're done. You have to talk to every tribe. DAP can be helpful in identifying which tribes are going to be affected, to get you that initial list, and then you have to do the legwork of reaching out to each one of them, finding which department is relevant to your project. Yeah, it's not going to be easy. And then if it does become contentious or there is conflict, usually we don't recommend a consultant. Usually we'd like you to talk to each individual tribe. The way we figured this out with Tulalip and Muckleshoot was that we used Snoqualmie peoples instead of like a specific tribal name like Tulalip, Snoqualmie, Muckleshoot. Some tribes are going to want to be named individually, and some are going to be okay with a little bit more generic wording. You just really have to talk to each one of them and find out, ask that question and try to get an answer. So, yeah.
And Ryan, I would reframe your own evaluation. You are qualified to do this. You are, yeah. I mean, that's the 501c3 facilitator piece. The agencies are going to be short-staffed and have procedural steps to follow. You can actually align and form a more community and collaborative path to get the conversation started. And like I said, if you keep it simple and you find out through what Michael just said, like find out what's important to the tribes and what isn't, and hopefully just by you facilitating it, you'll actually get approval like we saw happen here.
It's that fear piece we're talking about.
It's the fear piece, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the only time that I've ever really been offended is when a project is like breaking ground and we're just then being notified about it. It's weird because there's that fear to initiate that you're going to like offend us, but if you don't include us and you don't talk to tribes until the end, that's going to offend them, like 100%. So yeah, you got to start early, and we're really starting to notice that, like Yvonne mentioned, state and federal agencies are outsourcing a lot of this work to you all, outsourcing trail planning and vision planning and construction and maintenance to non-government agencies, and those groups, organizations, they don't have the obligation to consult with tribes like the federal government does or a state agency does. They have a legal obligation to consult, and that's usually where like CEPA or NEPA is when it happens. But we don't want to be coming in halfway through your development and have to tell you bad news. And it takes so much more resources to change direction then than it would have at the beginning if you had reached out to the tribes.
Well, we're at 4:15. Happy to stay if anyone has any additional questions or input, but otherwise I think we can pretty well wrap up for the session. Thank you very much.